This video contains spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and 2. If, hypothetically, I said that Arcane is a bunch of failures, I would not be wrong technically. Almost all the characters fail at some point. And I think that one of the biggest successes of the series is precisely showing how these characters engage with their failure. Let's analyze this. First, I have to specify why I think failures in Arcane are special compared to other stories. It is very common to structure stories in 3 or 4 acts, and usually failure is a component of the structure. At the start, the protagonist has a problem, but they face it in the wrong way, so they fail. And through failure, they learn what the right approach is, until they can solve the problem. A variation of this structure is that the protagonist identifies a certain problem and fails to solve it until they understand that their real problem is another one, so they shift their goals relative to this new problem and finally succeed. In both cases, failures are steps of an evolution for the character, and the external events of the plot accompany the internal journey of the protagonist. They are two different plot lines, but in good stories they are intertwined and coordinated so that they simply tell two sides of the same theme, and they complement each other. However, I could not retrace this typical structure in any character of Arcane. Arcane does not follow this very common structure and uses failure very differently. All the characters in Arcane have the same uncommon relation to failure as part of their plot. This is why I think it's worth noting. I will first explain the loose structure I recognize in the arcs of Arcane, and then focus on each main character individually to explain how they fit the structure. So, all the characters in Arcane encounter failure, yes, but not as a step in their evolution. The failure does not correct their mistakes, it just causes a lot of problems to them. Each character in Arcane has goals, but can't reach them, and has to deal with the consequences of failure and new different problems. Now let's analyze character by character how failure affects them. After that, I will discuss how this uncommon use of failure affects the story. Starting with Vi. She does not evolve through the series. She keeps her attitude of self-sacrifice in order to fix what she perceives as her mistakes, and she fights hard but fails anyway. At the start of Season 1, she tries to save Vander and she failed. She was supposed to protect Powder, but she failed that too. Later she accompanies Caitlyn to Zone in order to save her sister and fight Silco. She fails at saving her sister, who is now Jinx. The consequence is Jinx kills Caitlyn's mother. Now Vi has to fix this. She joins Caitlyn's mission to hunt Jinx, and of course she fails this too. Not only this, she also loses Caitlyn. Then she joins Jinx in another mission, which is saving Vander, and they fail. At the end, she tries to save her sister again, and she fails. First, when Jinx, just freed from the prison, runs away, and then when she sacrifices herself. Through all these failures, Vi does not learn that her approach is wrong, and that she should stop trying to fix her mistake, or she should change the approach to fix them, or that she should not feel guilty for mistakes she did not commit intentionally. She keeps trying to fix them. She only changes the type of problem, but she keeps failing at them. So the failures do not push her evolution. Her whole story is her trying to deal the best she can with failures and their consequences, generating other failures on the way. Vi is a particularly tragic character, so this is not surprising. I think that it's actually part of the charm of her character. She does not give up facing problems and dealing with the consequences, even if she keeps failing, and her self-sacrificing attitude encourages empathy for her. Let's now look at Jinx. Of course, her first big failure in episode 3 of season 1, when she accidentally blows up her family while trying to protect them, is an event that has huge consequences for her and for the whole plot. Then, during season 1, Jinx is an erratic character, so she doesn't have evident goals that she can fail, but we can still spot a few things she cares about. She cares about making Silco happy, for example by stealing the hex gems for him, or obeying his plan of building a rocket to attack Piltover. But at the same time, she's also looking for her sister, and she is trying to separate her from Caitlyn, whom she perceives as a rival for Vi's attention. She fails everything. To start, her two main wishes, to be loved by Silco and to be loved by Vi, are in contradiction, so this is already a head start for failure. At the end of the season, she plans to choose definitively if she should stay with Silco or with Vi, so that she can succeed at least at one of her goals. But her plan does not go according to plan, and she ends up losing Silco and rejecting Vi. So she fails her goal. Moreover, every time Vi and Caitlyn were about to part ways, Jinx unintentionally reunited them, which is the opposite of what she wanted. When Vi and Caitlyn say goodbye on the bridge in episode 7, Jinx's intervention is what injures and endangers Caitlyn, requiring Vi to step in to help her and then escort her to Piltover. Later in episode 8, when Vi is disappointed by the attitude of Piltovians towards Zone's problems, she states that she wants to cut Caitlyn off, and she acts accordingly. But then Jinx kidnaps both of them and brings them forcefully together again at her creepy tea party in episode 9. As we find out in season 2, the following actions of Jinx, killing Caitlyn's mother, only make Vi feel guilty and in need of protecting Caitlyn, making them stick together again. In season 2, Jinx's goals are equally unsuccessful. At the start, she declares she wants to kill Vi, but soon finds out she's not able to. And that is a first failure she has to deal with, the persistences of her love for her sister, and the hurt at seeing her becoming an enforcer. Then Jinx bonds with Isha, feels more accepted by Zonites, and reunites with Vi to save Vander, which open new possibilities for her, and she seems to like them. But everything is destroyed soon. She has then to face the sorrow caused by these failures. At the end, it's not clear what her goal is, but she manages to transform the failure of endangering a loved one again, Vi, into a half success. She protects Vi, but she needs to sacrifice herself. So, in a certain way, her final action is still a reaction to a failure. In Jinx's case, I think that her ending results into a sort of success. She's not able to hurt anybody anymore. But it's not a success if we follow the logic she learns from Ekko, that she can have a bright future. I think that Jinx survives, so technically she has a future, but probably she initially hopes she could have a future in Piltover with her family and friends, and she can't achieve that. Now Caitlyn. In season 1, she wants to protect Piltover and arrest Jinx. During her mission in Zone, she finds out that protecting Piltover is not exactly a good goal, since Piltover is responsible for Zone's misery. This is a learning evolution of her character. However, she still fails. She can't arrest Jinx, she can't protect Piltover from her, but on the contrary, in season 2 she attributes the death of her mother and the other counselors to her own excessive confidence in taking that mission alone. And she can't defend Zone's rights. She focuses on revenge for her mother, leading her to mistreat Zonites in season 2, first individually as an enforcer on a mission, then collectively when she becomes a dictator and leads Zone's military occupation, allowing several illicit arrests and tortures. So she fails the goals she used to have in season 1, and she needs to deal with the heavy consequences. Her main goal in season 2 of avenging her mother is not achieved, but not failed either. In this case, she has an evolution, learning that pardoning Jinx is the real solution. So her character has an arc, at least on this point. However, she collects many other failures that we have mentioned, and to which we should add being unable to protect Piltover from Viktor. The very attack by Viktor and Ambessa is the consequence of her actions. First, enabling Ambessa to gain a lot of power, helping her finding Viktor, and then betraying her and igniting her rage against Piltover. Also, Caitlyn, by learning to pardon Jinx, is implied to also have learned that she did many wrong things while trying to catch her during her dictatorship. She leads us to assume that she probably wants to fix these mistakes she has made, but she does not in the series. There are a few hints suggesting that she will act to fix her past mistakes in the future after the ending, such as her stepping back from the command and re-establishing the council, giving up her council seat for a representative of Zone, not chasing Jinx anymore despite suspecting her survival. But these are small things. She has to fix a lot more, since she has been oppressing Zone heavily, and the war she caused made many fatalities. But she has not made proper amends for these things by the end of the series yet. No matter what she will do in the future, and I am sure she will do a lot, the series ends with the consequences of her failures still unsolved. Since we mentioned Ambessa, and she is quite relevant for the failures of other characters, let's continue with her. Her goals change a lot as the situation in which she finds herself changes, and as more information is revealed about her motivation. In Season 1, she arrives in Piltover to seize X-Tech and use it for weapons. In Season 2, she has X-Tech, but she is unable to use it for weapons. In Season 2, she also states that she wants to protect Mel because family is the most important thing to her. But then Mel is kidnapped, and later it's revealed that Ambessa accepted to sacrifice her son. Not very great at protecting her family. During Season 2, she tries to manipulate Caitlyn, but is then betrayed by her. She tries to take control of Warwick to use it as a weapon, but he is killed by Isha before she can. It is revealed that originally she had planned to use Mel's magical powers as a weapon, but in episode 8 of season 2 she rejects this plan, adding the motivation, which is probably just an excuse, that Mel is not strong enough for her needs. Then she joins forces with Viktor, and they plan to conquer the X-Tech Center in Piltover, but Viktor is stopped by Ekko, and anyway Ambessa doesn't survive long enough to see the end of their mission. I can't see a single time in which Ambessa succeeded, but time and time again she acknowledges the new problems that rose, and she keeps facing them, trying to balance her stable goal of finding powerful weapons with the limitations given by the situation at hand. Her daughter Mel is one person causing many limitations to her, but Mel herself fails a lot. At first, she wants to make her family proud of her by making something special out of Piltover. She tries to do this by developing Hextech, and in particular she wants to develop weapons for defense. She can't convince Jayce and Viktor to do this, until Jayce builds weapons for attack. None of this goes according to Mel's plans. At the end of season 1, she decides to give up her chase after family's approval by voting in favor of Zone's independence. But then the independence is made impossible by Jinx's attack. She negotiated with the other councillors for an invasion of Zone that she opposes but can't avoid. But she obtains at least the interdiction of Hextech weapons. But then Caitlyn goes on a mission in Zone with Hextech weapons, and later she leads a full-scale invasion. Everything that Mel did not want. Mel's main worry at the start of season 2 seems to be stopping her mother's Ambessa from meddling with the politics of Piltover, but she fails that too because she is abducted away from Piltover. In this dimension of the Black Rose, she is not able to save Elora. When she comes back to Piltover, she can't discourage her mother from invading Piltover. She fights against her mother in episode 9, and here I admit I did not understand everything. She briefly lets the Black Rose catch Ambessa, but then she retrieves her from them again. I think that she was not part of her plan since the beginning, because she decided to fight against Ambessa only later during the war to help Caitlyn, and for the most part of it she only uses magic to shield Caitlyn, getting the chance to attack Ambessa with it only at the end. So I think Mel here improvised with the tool she had at hand. She tried to stop Ambessa, but I think she had not the intention of killing her. Therefore she tries to save her from the Black Rose at the last minute, but Ambessa dies anyway. Later, Mel's efforts are useless against Viktor's power. So Mel fails a lot too. Jayce and Viktor have similar goals and failures in Season 1. In Act 1, after Jayce is struggling because of his dangerous experience, They join forces and they succeed at continuing X-Tech development. However, they repeat that their ultimate goal is to make it available for people to improve lives, and that is never achieved. Viktor tries to use it to heal himself, and not only fails in the end, but he kills his assistant in the process. Jayce uses a Hextech hammer when trying to stop Silco with Vi, but he quits the mission as soon as he interrupts a child's life. Then he negotiated with Silco to give him independence in exchange of Jinx. He doesn't know that Silco plans to refuse. Jayce convinces the council to vote in favor of Zone's independence, but that decision is revoked by Jinx's attack. So Jayce can't achieve Zone's independence. In Season 2, he has a clear goal after he comes back from the abduction in the Hex Core. He wants to destroy Viktor to prevent a catastrophic future for Piltover. He fails. He only succeeds to stop Viktor at the end, after the intervention of Ekko, when a lot of damage has already been done. This is not a success in a narrative sense, it is not a character evolution. Jayce has always been trying to stop Viktor, and he only succeeds when the situation becomes favorable to it, not because Jayce used his failure to learn and he changed his approach to the problem. Viktor, as said, has some common failure as Jayce in Season 1, but also some different ones. In Season 1, he wants to destroy the X-Core. He not only fails, but he merges with the X-Core, becoming one with it. At the start of his commune, he wants to help suffering humans, but he ends up endangering them more since their existence becomes dependent on his survival. Then, after being revived by Singed, he fails even more her first goal of healing humanity. Now he wants to eliminate humanity, since he sees it as flawed. He thinks he is doing something beneficial for humans, but it's clearly not the case. And in the end, anyway, he quits his goal. In this case too, there is some character evolution, because Jayce is able to make him understand that he is committing a big mistake, therefore he quits. But he still fails his consistent goal of helping humanity. He never truly did. He did not improve lives with Hextech, he did not heal permanently the Shimmer addicts and the other people at the commune that did not survive his disappearance, and he surely did not help people by bringing a war to Piltover, but rather the contrary. In the end, he is able to stop his wrongdoings, but anyway, he has done nothing good for humanity. He failed his goal. Now let's discuss Silco. He was aware that he could not obtain everything he wanted, since Jayce proposed to him that he could obtain independence for Zone if he traded Jinx in. Silco wanted an independent Zone, but he also wanted to support Jinx. More precisely, support Jinx as this identity of Jinx, the bringer of sorrow for everybody, the reckless shooter and bomb-obsessed genius. He knew he could not have both. He ends up with none of them. He had already failed multiple times to push Jinx to delete her surviving identity as Powder and her bond with her sister. When he dies, he still reminds Jinx of her perfection as a Jinx, but it is not enough to support her and give her direction after he disappeared, as we see in the start of Season 2. And of course, Zone never sees any independence. Silco fails both his goals. Sevika's goals are quite similar to Silco's. She has her own ideas about what is good for Zone, and she thinks Silco is the best one to make them real, so she serves and supports him. But then he dies without achieving Sevika's dreams for Zone. In Season 2, Sevika tries to unite first the Chem Barons against Piltover, but she fails. Many of them die or disappear for several reasons, so she can't count on them anymore. She tries helping Jinx against Caitlyn and Vi, but she can't win against them, and is only able to activate an explosion as a distraction to escape their enemies. She is not able to convince Jinx to become the leader of Zone's rebellion. Despite trying, she is not able to unite the rebelling Zonites against the Piltovian invasion. Then she disappears for most of Act 2 and 3, but she reappears to listen judgmentally to Jayce's plea for help in episode 8, and then unexpectedly in episode 9 to fight alongside Piltover, which seems a bit out of character for her, not an evolution in her arc. At the end, we see her sitting at the council, probably because Caitlyn gave her her family seat. We don't know why Sevika was chosen to represent Zone, and we don't know if she will succeed at defending their interests against 6 other Piltovian councillors, so I would not count it as a success. Vander had a different strategy to pursue Zone's well-being. In Act 1 of Season 1, he agrees on sacrificing himself in order to appease the Enforcers, and consequently protecting his community and his family. By episode 3, his family is mostly dead, and by episode 4 we see that Silco has been poisoning and disrupting Zone. In season 2, I can't really identify his goals other than winning the control of his mind against Warwick and getting back to his family. We know how these things go. Some more failures. There are 2 minor characters for which the relation of failure and success is different. These are 2 characters who are minor because of the screen time they have, but they have a major influence on the plot. Singed and Ekko. We don't see a lot about Singed, but in season 2 we find out that his ultimate goal is saving his daughter. He openly admits he accepted doing the worst things in order to pursue this goal. We can assume that during the series he fails a lot. He spends a lot of time experimenting and researching methods to revive his daughter, but since she stays dead, or anyway unconscious most of the time, he is not able to find a cure for her during most of the series. But at the end he succeeds. We see that his daughter is moving and also that she has a body very similar to Viktor's machine-like creatures, implying that this was his doing. Why can Singed succeed? I have seen a video by Jne in which he argues this is just an apparent success. He did not convince me, but I will put the link in the description in case you are interested. I have a different interpretation. First of all, we see a few seconds of Singed's daughter alive while we hear Caitlyn's celebratory discourse for the fallen of the war. In particular, it's the bit in which she says that our only consolation is that for every loss we found some good, some light, worth gaining, worth fighting for. So Singed daughter is framed as something good that came out of all this destruction. It's not framed by focusing on Singed as an accomplishment of him, but by focusing on her, on the fact that a young, innocent girl is able to live in the world again. Of course, an implication is that Singed succeeded, but in this scene, this is not the idea that is highlighted here. Moreover, I think that this conclusion for Singed is coherent with the whole mood of Arcane. We have seen how all the characters face failure repeatedly, and we will discuss this for Ekko too. Giving only Singed a complete success is a sort of failure of karma, of justice of the plot, but it is intentional. In Arcane, bad guys can win, good guys can lose a lot. It is a harsh truth the audience has to deal with, just like the characters constantly deal with the harsh truth of their failures. Did you expect a perfect happy ending in which everything is fixed in such a story? Ekko is the opposite of Singed. At the end, he is the hero who saves the day, but it does not feel like a triumph at all. But let's start by the beginning, because he fails too. In season 1, we don't see much about him. Mainly, we know he cares for his community. He plans to bring back the X-Gems to Piltover with Caitlyn, but he can't because they are stopped by Marcus and then by Jinx. While fighting her, he is not able to hit her with a fatal blow, but I would not count this as a failure because eliminating Jinx was never framed as his main goal. In season 2, he starts investigating the illness of the tree sustaining his community, but he is interrupted by the abduction in the X-Core. In the alternate universe, he has character evolution. He openly states that this experience restored his faith and hope in a thriving Zone and in a healthy Jinx or Powder. He has not succeeded at it yet, but he has shifted his attitude to dealing with the problems in his universe. So, when he goes back, he is able to save Jinx and support her in a journey of building a better and more healthy version of herself. But by the end, Jinx disappears, leaving Ekko alone. The last time we see Ekko in the funeral scene, we see him firing up and letting fly a piece of paper, and we can guess that it contains the name of Powder or Jinx, the person he wanted to save but he has lost. In the final battle, Ekko can damage Viktor, and Jayce will then step in to definitely stop him, and therefore Ekko saves Piltover and Zone, but we don't know how much of his community has survived, not only to Viktor's attack, but also to the colonization by Piltover. As said, the last time we see Ekko, he is alone. He's not among his people being cheered for his return. Maybe his people are still there, but the final image we have of him is not framed as a success. Moreover, he is the person who, as far as we can see, cares the most for Zone's well-being and for equality and collaboration of its population and mutual help, and everything that makes a society healthy. He should be the one most indicated to be a representative for Zone at the council, but for some reason he is not the Zoneite sitting at the council. As said, the ending of the hero, despite technically having succeeded at least at the goal of defending Zone, is not presented as a triumphant happy ending. As we can see, failure is everywhere in Arcane's plot, but not as a constructive step in the evolution of a character arc. This does not mean that some characters can't have arcs. In some cases they change, they learn, they grow, they travel on a journey in which their relation to a certain topic evolves. I am thinking at evident examples such as Jinx and Caitlyn. However, they rarely achieve successes along this journey. They are confronted repeatedly with failure because, as said, in Arcane failure is not, or very rarely, used as a necessary step towards progress, unlike traditional structures of storytelling. In Arcane, as we have seen, failure is just the very common result obtained by any character attempting at pursuing their goals. The consequences on the plot are very interesting, in my opinion. On one side, characters act and affect the plot, but never in the exact way they intended. This means that the situation they create is not perfect, but still presents problem and they need to act further in an attempt at solving them, failing again and generating new problems to solve. This is not only an endless source of prompts to keep the plot moving, but it also provides variety. Often the characters find themselves in a different situation after they failed, and they have to adapt to this new situation in order to deal with. This is one source of change for characters, but as said, it is not really an evolution, since it is not a constructive change leading to success. It's just a change, the characters becoming different, not an improvement, the characters becoming better. Some examples are Vi, first trying to rescue her sister, then joining Caitlyn in the fight against Jinx. Or Caitlyn, first advocating to help Zone at the council, then coordinating a military invasion. Or Jinx too, first being a carrier of destruction in Zone, then becoming their hero. These different situations that the characters go through are a great chance to explore their personalities better, showing sides of them that can only appear when confronted to a certain environment or a certain problem. The greatness of Arcane comes from making these very different situations, in which the characters behave very differently, feel coherent and connect them to the same topics so that, even if the character is not evolving linearly, there is a common theme to bring everything together. And I have to admit that the degree of success by season 2 in bringing all the varied events and storylines together is up for debate. Another consequence of failure, which in my opinion adds a lot of spice to the story, is that characters are forced to be imperfect and worse than they wish to. Of course, it's easy to be the good guy when everything goes according to your plans, and of course, you only planned good things. It is a lot harder, I'd say impossible, when your plan works partially and you can't achieve all the good things you wanted, or maybe you even generate bad things accidentally. In Arcane, characters constantly need to deal with non-ideal situations in which they know they can't achieve perfection. Therefore, they have to compromise and choose which goals to prioritize and which tools they admit using to achieve them. This gives a lot of nuance to the motivations and moral positionings of the characters. They can't act completely good or completely bad, but they can only deal as best as they can with the current situation, knowing that their best attempt will also produce bad outcomes. As said, they fail, and they need to deal with the consequences of their failures. The results they did not want, but obtained setting a new situation. This nuancing of choice options and limitations is made even more complex and interesting because often the nuances are generated coherently by another character, also acting imperfectly and achieving less than ideal results. All characters influence the plot, but none of them fully succeeds. The combination of their actions and their interactions generates situations in which they all fail and they all need to compromise with the consequences. This allows the characters to have a lot of agency, a lot of influence on the plot and commitment to action, despite their repeated failures. What do you think of the treatment of failure in Arcane? Do you agree with my thesis? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of failure, I have analyzed Vi's story and her many failures in this video. Please like, subscribe for more Arcane essays, and see you in the next video. Bye!